a couple seconds to take your seats. So our understanding is that a few people got held up with some traffic on Highway 280. It's Monday morning in Birmingham. Traffic happens. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sherry Jackson, and I want to welcome you here to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute for Day 2 of the BCRI FBI Birmingham Division Law Enforcement Civil Rights Conference. And the topic this year is hate crimes. And yesterday it got off to a phenomenal start with the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, kicking things off and really digging into some history for us. And so this morning we're going to get started because we really do have dynamic discussions lined up for all of you who are participating. The history of hate, going inside the mind of hate, and investigating some of the most heinous hate crimes that we've seen in our time just in the last few years. And even today, as we gather here, my friends, there is a possible hate crime investigation going on in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where 2 African-American men, 2 random incidents were gunned down, one guy just walking to work. And as late as yesterday, police there in Baton Rouge saying that the young man they arrested in this case, right now he's being held on charges related to drugs, but they believe that this could have been racially motivated in that case. So again, it just underscores as a journalist for me how necessary it is that we all gather and have these conversations, particularly where the community and law enforcement can discuss together. And as Rod Rosenstein said yesterday, that people don't necessarily report hate crimes all the time. And so that's just the very beginning and foundation part of it. I am just your MC for today, though. So I'm going to bring up the president and CEO of this wonderful institution, Ms. Andrea Taylor, who will officially welcome you here to the Civil Rights Institute.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Sherry, for being a part of this year after year, and welcome to all of you. As you heard, we had a terrific beginning to this conference yesterday at the 16th Street Baptist Church with DAG, Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Ron Rosenstein. He brought us a very informative and inspired message about what the current state of hate crimes are in this country, which unfortunately are increasing. And he also talked about some of the cases that are currently before the Attorney General's office and indicated a commitment to continue to pursue those cases with all deliberate speed and due diligence. And so again, I want to say welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming yesterday. Thank you for coming back on this early Monday morning. And I want to also thank the village that it takes for us to put a conference like this together. On your program, you'll see on the back the list of the Law Enforcement and Civil Rights Committee members. I also want to thank the FBI, our partners in this effort. This is the 10th year, 11th year, I believe, of this conference that really addresses the intersection between race, law enforcement, and community. And every year, as we sit down to think about a theme, we really are stunned and somewhat disheartened by the fact that there are many topics from which to choose, and that this subject continues to be a compelling and important one. We don't seem to be learning, Sherry, the lessons of history. So you have the things like the incident that you just described, and it's so important for young and old to be reminded of the history and to learn the lessons of the struggle. So I want to thank the committee that put this together. I want to thank the FBI, and I want to particularly give a shout out to any of the committee members who are here. Would you just raise your hand and let us thank you for your efforts? Thank you very much. We have a full day. We're getting a little late start, but I think we can get back on track. So with that, I will say again, thank you for coming, and we look forward to engaging with you around hate crimes and also moving toward love and justice here in the great city of Birmingham. Thank you.
Ms. Andrea Taylor, and as she said, they partner with the FBI Birmingham Division to do this, and so the next person that you will hear from will be Mr. Johnny Sharp, who is the special agent in charge of the FBI Birmingham Division. They're partners.
So good morning, everyone. Good morning. So I'm brand new, so I'm actually like in week number 6 on the job here as the new special agent in charge for the FBI office here in Birmingham. My predecessor, Roger Stanton, took a promotion, became an assistant director, is now back up to FBI headquarters. But so very happy to be here. As you can tell by the Queen's English, I am a native Southerner. I'm born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee originally. Have spent a lot of my career in the South. I spent 8 years in our Jackson, Mississippi field office. But very happy to be here. I've been pinching myself every day since I got the phone call from the director saying that I was selected to be the new SAC for the Birmingham Division of the FBI back in May. So truly, truly happy to be here. So on behalf of the men and women of the FBI's Birmingham Division, I would like to welcome and thank each of you for attending today's session of our annual conference on law enforcement and civil rights. I'd like to thank Ms. Andrea Taylor and the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute for the continued partnership with the FBI for hosting this conference, which, as she noted, has been going on since 2006. Collaboration plays a very vital role in effectively engaging civil rights issues in our communities, and the partnerships between the Institute and the FBI is a model for other communities throughout the country to follow. Certainly something that other communities should emulate. FBI investigations into civil rights violations are greatly enhanced by joint efforts with our federal, state, and local partners, which validates the need for conferences such as this one to discuss the problem and how to adequately address it. For those of you who did attend yesterday's session, you heard Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein discuss the renewed focus of vigorously prosecuting civil rights violations by the Department of Justice, particularly those involving hate crimes, which is this year's theme for the conference. The FBI is the primary federal law enforcement agency responsible for investigating potential violations of federal civil rights statutes. Within the FBI's civil rights program, hate crimes are designated as our highest priority due to the significant impact these types of crimes can have on entire communities, not just the individuals targeted by the hate. A hate crime is often described as a crime against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by the offender's bias against the victim or property owner. While the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution does allow for the free expression of both offensive and sometimes hateful speech, this protection is not extended to criminal acts based on intolerance or to purposely intimidating speech or actions which could be interpreted by a reasonable person to be serious intent to cause harm. So traditionally, the FBI investigations of hate crimes were limited to crimes in which bias was based on race, color, religion, or national origin. However, with the passage of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Hate Crimes Prevention Act of 2009, the FBI was authorized to expand the scope of hate crimes investigations to those including actual or perceived sexual orientation, disability, gender, or gender identity. So our objective here today is to promote cooperation between law enforcement and the community, encourage open and honest dialogue between us, and to help educate the community on what a federal hate crime is and how to report it. We have assembled a terrific lineup of presenters for today's session who will illustrate the problem of hate. And later this afternoon, we will have a panel discussion, as you see here, with leaders from some of our more targeted communities here in the Birmingham area. Again, thank you for taking the time for being here, and I hope each of you gained very much from today's presentations. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome again to Birmingham. We do have, yesterday we did see the U.S. Attorney from the Northern District, J-Town, attended. Is there anyone from the U.S. Attorney's Office here today who would like to just bring greetings? Again, they've been instrumental as well in helping get everything going and bringing in their boss or their number 2 guy, the Deputy Attorney General yesterday, but they were on hand yesterday. And so with that, I don't think we have any other greetings for you. We're going to get this panel started, make up a little bit of the time we have, and so I think very, very appropriate. Our first discussion is in a history of hate. It's a history of hate. Dr. Andrew Baer will be the presenter. He's an assistant professor of history at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. His focus is on social movements and criminal justice. And so it's very interesting as it's day 3 of protests in the streets in St. Louis over a decision made in a court there. So if you will please welcome to the podium Dr. Andrew Baer, who is a professor at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, who is presenting first on a history of hate.
All right, good morning. Good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm actually relatively new to Birmingham. I moved here a little over a year ago, and so I'm very humbled to be in this great space that I've enjoyed as a tourist, really, so far. And also, it's a great opportunity to get out of my classroom and out of my apartment where I spent most of my time and to finally meet some people in the community. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'll cut through. I'm going to go relatively quickly through some of this. I didn't want to overload us or overburden us with this really hard history of hate in the United States and in the pre-colonial or the colonial period before the founding of the United States. So what I'm going to talk about really is just to remind us that hate and hate crimes, while they're timeless, they have a history. Something that I think a lot of people tend to overlook, the idea that our ideas, our concepts of race, the way we respond to hate, is all something that has not been timeless, right? It has not been flat or static, but has been dynamic and has changed over time. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but don't worry, it won't be much on there. I have put a few arguments up here to sort of anchor my talk so you don't get lost in the details that I tend to overindulge in. So in the United States, the targets of hate, its public and its private expression and our responses to hate have all changed over time. Tracing the evolution of hate, historians note the influence of larger phenomenon on its trajectory. So to the historian, the character, the intensity, and frequency of hate are all shaped by external forces. We leave internal motivations for the most part to the psychologist, and we have someone following me that will talk, I believe, more on that point. For example, for the historian, any event that reorders the distribution of finite resources, including economic downturns, population shifts, natural disasters, popular elections, can impact the prevalence or the visibility of hate in American life. And too often in American history, hate has guided the force of events, limited the opportunity for collective prosperity, and exacerbated the violence and the misery of everyday life. In America, as elsewhere, hate has been both a product and a producer of the cleavages that divide us. Indeed, these categories of race, class, gender, sexuality, religion, ethnicity, on and on, they receive much of their power from the intensity of hate that they inspire. At the heart of campaigns for social justice lies an effort to alleviate and prevent the pain caused by concrete manifestations of hate. Now, a comprehensive history of hate demands far more attention and time than I can provide today. But the history of hate crimes is a bit more accessible, so I think I'll focus a little more on the history of hate crimes in a much more recent history. I just want to remind us before I move on to that is that hate is something that has been foundational to American life and American character since its beginning. If we want to trace the origins of the United States, perhaps to the first permanent English settlements in North America, Jamestown in 1607, we get the landing of the Mayflower and the creation of colonies in Massachusetts in the 1620s. We notice, of course, that I'm sure it's familiar to many of us in this room, that the first ship of African slaves appeared in English North America in 1619, of course, 1 year before the Mayflower. And while the 17th century was a period where the ideas of race, the ideas of a kind of fixed and permanent categories of whiteness and blackness, these were something that was in flux in this period. Right, that the European intellectual project of creating race, creating concepts of race hatred, was something that happened simultaneous with the foundation of the English colonies, other European colonies in the New World, and of course the United States. So these are projects that went hand in hand developing concepts of whiteness, concepts of racial hierarchy. And I would say it's impossible to deconstruct race and racial hatred and animosity from American history. As I thought of what kinds of moments I might talk about in the history of hate in the United States, the list that I was compiling immediately became massive, much larger than anything I could really handle today. So I thought I'd at least remind us that going back all the way to the 17th century, we see how hate not only helped divide Americans, but helped unite certain Americans around a mutual hatred for others. And so what came to mind is an event that many of you might remember from your own education in history. In the 1670s, in the Chesapeake Bay area in Virginia, there was a very famous rebellion known as Bacon's Rebellion, where we have a group of white indentured servants and tenant farmers who are poor, who found that the promise of the so-called land of opportunity of Virginia was not being fulfilled. And so there was a effort by poor people, including slaves and some former slaves who had won their freedom in this period, where kind of freedom and unfreedom were not as rigid as they would become. We see this great uprising where these rebels sacked and burned the capital of Jamestown to